24-year-old math teacher, full of life and passion for helping her students, is brutally slaughtered by one of her own in her own school. How does this even happen? This was a planned, calculated, cold-blooded murder, and don't even get me started on the horror of what happened in that bathroom. Welcome to Crime Bites. I'm your host, Carrie Jobin, former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and multi-published award-winning true crime author. Today, I bring you the incredibly disturbing case of Philip Chism and the brutal murder of Colleen Whitzer, a horrific crime that played out in broad daylight and was captured step by school surveillance cameras. There were 141 of them on campus. So, in October 22nd, 2013, the town of Danvers, Massachusetts faced a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Colleen Whitzer, a vibrant and beloved 24-year-old math teacher, is brutally attacked and murdered by 14-year-old Philip Chism. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Colleen had asked Philip to stay after school for some help with math, right? She's going to tutor him. But what happened next was anything but ordinary. And the sequence of events leading to Colleen's murder is disturbingly clear and captured in harrowing detail by the school's surveillance system. So let's walk through that. At around 3 p.m., cameras captured Colleen and Philip walking down the hallway toward her classroom. Colleen appears relaxed, chatting with Philip. There's no indication of what's to come. This is a pretty ordinary scene. But minutes later, surveillance footage captured Philip leaving the classroom and heading to a nearby bathroom. And what does he do? He changes into a dark hoodie and gloves, preparing for what he's about to do. And he returns to the classroom. Then we see Colleen walking toward the bathroom. She's completely unaware that Philip is following her, but surveillance cameras can see this. And they follow her, both of them, outside the bathroom. They catch Philip glancing back to ensure that no one is watching him, and he enters behind her. Once inside the bathroom, of course, there are no cameras, right? But the evidence tells the story. Philip attacked Colleen with a box cutter, a weapon that he had easily brought to school and concealed in his backpack. The assault is brutal and unrelenting, and Colleen tries to fight back, but she's overpowered. When Philip emerges from the bathroom, he's dragging a large recycling bin. Again, this is all caught on surveillance footage. They see him struggling with the weight as he wheels it out of the building. And of course, can you guess? Inside the bin is Colleen Whitzer. And medical examiners opined that she was still alive. Okay, so imagine that horror, bleeding, alive in that bin. In an act of audacity and cold calculation, Philip wheels the bin across the schoolyard into a wooded area nearby. Right? This is all happening in broad daylight while students and faculty are still on campus. How does no one see this or stop him? The answer is unsettlingly simple. Philip's actions, though strange, did not immediately raise alarms. I mean, the sight of a student moving a garbage bin across campus doesn't scream, crime in progress. And his demeanor, calm, methodical, masks the unimaginable horror that has just unfolded. Because Philip wasn't done. He discarded Colleen's body in the woods, close by to the school, as though nothing had happened. And then he goes to a movie theater using Colleen's credit card to buy a ticket. Right? He still calculated effort. He has this calculated effort to appear normal and divert suspicion. But by evening, Colleen's family reports her missing, and a search leads investigators back to the high school, where the blood in the bathroom and the surveillance footage paint a really grim picture. If Philip Chism is arrested that night, one could ask, why were these cameras not recording in real time, right? Maybe they should put a camera in the bathroom. I don't know. That's another debate. But the jury ultimately convicts him of first-degree murder. They sentence him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Are you kidding me? This man brutally murdered a teacher in the prime of her life. What message does it send that you can commit a horrific premeditated murder and walk free someday? Justice for Colleen means keeping her killer behind bars forever. Now, Philip's defense attorneys argue that he struggled with, can you guess this, significant mental health challenges, including signs of early psychosis, right? They highlight that he exhibited symptoms such as paranoia, delusions, emotional instability, which they claim impaired his ability to fully comprehend his actions or control his behavior, right? Philip is only 14 years old at the time of the murder, and his lawyers argue that his brain was still developing, particularly in the areas related to impulse control and decision-making. I mean, that is true, right? This is a common argument in juvenile cases. It's rooted in research about adolescent brain development. The defense also points to Philip's recent move from Tennessee to Massachusetts, and they claim that this is a significant disruption in his life, and they suggest that the move, combined with difficulties adjusting to a new school and environment, contributed to his emotional distress and isolation. Okay. Philip was actually a soccer star on the soccer team, and how many of us know people that have moved from one school to another, right? We don't become killers. I mean, the defense also argued that because of Philip's young age, he had the capacity for rehabilitation. Okay. So they asked the court to consider all of his possibilities, right? The possibility of transforming his life over time rather than imposing a sentence that effectively ensured he would die in prison. Look, I am not an undercover prosecutor, despite what it might seem, but don't give me this "he's only 14" excuse. 14 is old enough to know right from wrong. He planned this attack. He brought a box cutter to school. He changed his clothes. He used Colleen's credit card to buy a movie ticket afterward. Right? Does this sound like someone who didn't know what he was doing? Call a spade a spade. Because a year later, when Chism was 15, he attacked a Massachusetts Department of Youth Services worker at a facility in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood. Now, he only now, 10 years later, pleaded guilty to those charges. 10 years. And listen to this MO. In that case, Chism followed the 29-year-old woman into the bathroom using a pencil as a weapon. He pinned her against a wall and attempted to strangle her, leaving the victim with injuries to her head, neck, face, and back. In that victim impact statement, this is what that 29-year-old victim had to say. She said she still feels the terror from the attack 10 years later. She calls Chism a monster. She said, "I remember being unable to leave my bedroom for hours for fear that he'd be waiting for me, ready to kill me." Right? True monsters exist in the world, and Philip Chism is one of them. So we need to talk about Philip Chism, right? He is described, right? Are you ready for this? Quiet, introverted, possibly emotionally distressed by the move from Massachusetts to Tennessee because his parents got a divorce, blah, 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 right? He's reportedly struggling to adjust to his new environment and has been seen noticeably withdrawn at times. So before the day of the crime, there were no documented reports of Philip engaging in violent or overtly alarming behavior at the high school. Teachers and staff largely viewed him as a quiet but intelligent student who didn't cause trouble, right? How many times have we heard this description? But one particularly troubling incident occurred on the day of the murder. So earlier that afternoon, Philip displayed bizarre behavior during math class, and this is how it came about. Colleen Ritzer mentioned Tennessee, which is Philip's home state, and Philip seemed visibly upset. Witnesses reported that he muttered to himself, he glared at Colleen, he became increasingly agitated. Several classmates noticed that he had odd demeanor that day, describing his acting off or weird. They saw him talking to himself, and it was noted that he was socially isolated, not having many close friendships. But despite this, there seemed to have been no clear indication from his earlier school in Tennessee that he posed a danger before he moved. I mean, how many times have we seen that, right? School to school, sharing information. I mean, if you see something, say something. I mean, this kid was acting strange. He's agitated, he's muttering, he's glaring. His classmates noticed it, but nothing is done. So could this have been prevented? I mean, we'll never know because no one acted. Why doesn't anybody act? What is the fear there, the reservation, right? I mean, Philip Chism's social life appeared to be minimal. He had only recently enrolled at Danvers High, so he didn't form a lot of close friendships. He didn't integrate very well into the school community. His peers described him as a loner, but he also played soccer and he showed some interest in sports. So he's basically a kid adjusting from moving from one school to another. So the signs, though subtle, were there. His agitation in class on the day of the murder, his difficulty adjusting to new environment, his increasingly withdrawn demeanor, they're pieces of a puzzle that when you put them together, they paint a picture of a struggling teenager. Now, Colleen Ritzer was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, an inspiring teacher whose life was cut tragically short. Her loss left a hole in her community that can never truly heal. And this case reminds us of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and the importance of vigilance, even in spaces that we trust, like our schools, right? If you see something, say something. So when considering how to prevent attacks like the one on Colleen Ritzer, schools and teachers have to take proactive measures, right? They have to enhance physical security. That's the key. Better surveillance, real-time recording, improving bathroom design for safer, more visible spaces, right? Maybe employ a buddy system. I know it sounds very, childish maybe, but behavioral threat assessment training for staff can help recognize early warning signs like isolation or aggression, while clear reporting systems ensure that troubling behaviors are addressed. So, building strong relationships with students fosters trust and communication. So whenever there's a transfer from schools need to share information. And lastly, schools should regularly rehearse emergency drills and collaborate with law enforcement to identify vulnerabilities and ensure preparedness, right? They do it with mass shooting now, but there are signs before that. So by combining these efforts, schools can offer better safeguards for students and staff. So I hope that's food for thought. Thank you for joining me for this deeply unsettling episode of Crime Bites. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more of this. And meanwhile, stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe.